position in this debate, Mr. Chairperson, is they want both a world in which more people have stable homes which they own and can never be taken away from them, and also a world in which people take out massive mortgages in order to spend more money. They cannot have both. Either it has to be the case that these houses are guaranteed to them, or it has to be the case that they're going to take lots of mortgages out. We don't think it is fair for them to say the price of housing will always go up in the long run. People who are vulnerable do not have a long run. People who are vulnerable may need to realise their capital now. That is why, when Margaret Thatcher introduced the Shengwu League proposal in the 1980s, it brutalised communities in the north. Why is this the case? Well, I'm going to talk about two things today. Firstly, how do we practically run what is either society or capitalism, depending what mood Shengwu is in? Secondly, what does the state actually owe people? What are the considerations of justice here? So, firstly, I think we probably do agree with Shengwu that civilised societies should try and help protect the vulnerable. I think we probably agree with Shengwu that we also kind of like capitalism. That's all cool, right? Happy with that? No. We are unclear on whether or not the homeless will get houses under this proposal. You're only giving them the equivalent value of social housing provided by the state, right? It's not immediately clear to me that you'll be able to buy private housing with that capital. But let's be charitable, let's assume that you could. Here's the plan. We are going to tax the rich into the ground in order to realise capital for the poorest people in society. This is bonkers, as James pointed out. Firstly, this is a direct transfer of wealth to the places where it is used least effectively. We showed you that we think capitalism works best when big investments are possible, and secondly, when the people making the investments are the people who have historically shown that they're pretty good at making those investments before. No thank you. We think more broadly it creates persistent insecurity for those people. No thank you. Right? People who are homeless, we think, have at least given us a little bit of evidence to show that they're not terribly good at handing on to private property. We think, secondly, the idea that Shengwu says that we get rid of the subprime mortgage crisis is nonsense. What the state is now doing is essentially buying houses on behalf of these people, and then, if we're to believe Shengwu, encouraging them to take out lots of debt. That is why this is analogous to subprime. No thank you, sir. And Dan, we're not implying that the state is a loan shark. We're implying that, as Shengwu implied, these people will be given their house by the state and then use that to borrow from other places. No thank you. We say furthermore, you've ignored all the stuff we gave you on the benefits of state control. James told you that buying a house for someone else is a sunk investment on behalf of the state. We say when the state owns housing, it is able to reallocate that housing as and when it becomes vacant in relation to short-term needs. We like that the state is able to respond to short-term increases in the vulnerability of certain communities at certain times. That's why we think it's actually better able to protect social networks. We also think that the point about social networks that was made over there relies on the claim, implicitly, that privately owning communities are more permanent in some way than the communities where housing is provided by the state. We think the clearest counterexample of this is indeed mining communities in the north, which were immensely cohesive throughout much of the 20th century. We say one of the best ways in the state was able to control and look after these communities was by assuring that stuff to them. No thanks, guys. But furthermore, what wrecked these communities, no Dan, was that these communities were then exposed to property speculation. This is a really simple argument. If there is more private property, it is easier to speculate on it because there is more of it, and also it is on the private market as opposed to being held and guaranteed to people by the state. No Shengwu. Finally, obligations to people, because I loved this, what the state owes to people. Because in regarding home ownership as a right, Shengwu presumably agrees with us that the state should only use my money to provide things to people in Manchester on the basis of rights, on the basis of providing them with fundamental goods. So there are four bases to the proposition's claim on this matter, but before I go there, why not? Shengwu.
Your story is that poor people own no capital because they're crap at managing it. Our story is that they don't own it because they had none in the first place, and I gave you 3 reasons why, none of which have been dealt with.
Okay, our claim is not necessarily that poor people have no capital because they are crap at managing it, just that we have eminently good reasons to believe that they are not the best people to necessarily be able to manage it, and that when you expose people, even if some of them are good at managing it right, the whole point is, as we know from documented evidence, is most of them aren't. It is simple to realise that when lots and lots of poor people take out lots of loans, their ability to successfully invest that is less than lots of rich people because they don't have the skills with which to realise the quality of that investment. That's why we think more of them will end up in debt traps. Now, Shengwu's 4 reasons to believe that home ownership is a right. Firstly, because if you rent your accommodation or it is guaranteed to you by the state, it is in some way no longer fully private. It was never explained to us, as Monash pointed out, why privacy couldn't be guaranteed by existing privacy laws. We wanted to hear something about that. We never heard anything further. We have to assume Kitson dumped that bit. Secondly, there is the idea of being beholden to a landlord. The most crucial point here is your relationship to the state is not that sort of relationship. However, your relationship to your mortgage lender almost certainly is. In order to make that argument, they have to be able to contend that people won't be beholden to mortgage lenders. But they rely simultaneously on claiming that people will take out vast amounts of debt. Then they gave you this stuff about the social basis of self-respect. Now, as we pointed out, this is a lie for several reasons. Firstly, because, you know, Kitson rents accommodation, that's not why we don't respect him. James stole my joke. Oh, no. But we say, also Kitson, it's not even about ensuring a minimum standard, right? We would point to places like France and Germany, where almost no one owns private property, right? We don't think no one in France is worthy of respect. Well, maybe for other reasons. So, like, we just think that's a lie. Secondly, we don't like the fetishization of commodities in that way, because the fetishization of home ownership, because we think it leads to an unstable society, where indeed people do end up thinking like Shengwu, and we think that is immensely damaging because it leads to bad investment decisions, as James said. Finally, they said it was necessary to the realization of other necessities. We think, firstly, it is an impoverished view of human nature that says you are in some way not fully self-actualized if you don't own a car. But we also add, if you think these things are necessities, Shengwu, you should do what the state does with all other necessities, which is give them the necessities. We see no reason why you should encourage people to take on a debt bomb in order to get them. We think that is a bizarrely long route round to providing people with necessary goods. The basic point here is that private property is open to private speculation by people like the Duke of Westminster in a way that state property is not. That's why we think it's much easier to secure people the one good we do agree with them about, the good of providing people with security. That is why we're very happy to defend a world in which we do not extend to people the option of wrecking their communities by exposing themselves to property speculation, and I'm enormously happy to oppose.